प्रातस्मरामि हृदि संस्फुरदात्मतत्त्वम् सच्चित् सुखं परमहं सगतिं तुरीयम् यत् स्वप्नजागर सुषुप्तिमवैति नित्यम् तद्ब्रह्म निष्कलमहं न च भूतसङ्गः तपोभिक्षीण पापानां शान्तानां वीतरागिणाम् मुमुक्षूणामपेक्षोऽयम् आत्मबोधो विधीयते बोधोऽन्यसाधनेभ्यो हि साक्षान्मोक्षैकसाधनम् पाकस्य वह्निवज्ञानम् विना मोक्षो न सिद्ध्यति। Hari Om. Welcome back to Gems of Bhagavad Gita. We will continue from where we left off yesterday. हम गुणों के बारे में चर्चा कर रहे थे, सत्व रजस तमस. That has been the theme throughout this chapter. And कल हमने चर्चा शुरू की on the topic who is a गुणातीत. गुणातीत कौन है जिसने गुणों को पार कर उस परम स्थिति तक पहुंच गया है? Who is that person? What are the qualities of such a person who has gone beyond the limitations of the gunas, the limitations of his own individual nature? Your gunas define your individuality. My gunas define my individuality. And we are helpless victims of our nature. We are helpless victims of our nature. So who is a gunatita? How do you, first of all, how does he behave in the world? How do you identify such a person? This is Arjuna's question. So how is the conduct of such a person? Because only by the conduct will any learner be able to identify. Only by the conduct, उनके बाहरी बर्ताव से मुझे पता लग पाएगा कि क्या वो सच में have they actually evolved. So what is the conduct of such a person? Arjuna asks, and he also asks, how does he go beyond these three gunas? What is the technique of his evolution? How has such a person, a gunatita, gone beyond these three gunas? And Bhagavan ne kal answer diya. The first answer he gave, the immediate answer he gave was, first of all, a person who neither hates nor craves for sattva, rajas or tamas, light, activity or even delusion. O Pandava, he hates not when present nor longs for them when absent. These are the words of verse number 22, which we discussed yesterday. I'll quickly share my screen so that we can recall together what was discussed yesterday. So, भगवान ने आंसर दिया, लाइट, एक्टिविटी एंड इवन डिल्यूशन, प्रकाश, प्रवृत्ति और मोह के भी प्रकट होने पर गुणातीत मनुष्य, अगुणातीत, नीदर हेट्स, न द्वेष करता है, नॉर लॉन्ग्स फॉर देम व्हेन एब्सेंट, ना ही आकांक्षा करता है जब वह नहीं हो. बेसिकली अब सो लाइट represents sattva, activity represents rajas, delusion, moha represents tamas. Regardless of the environment around him, if there's tamas around him, he doesn't hate it. He has no ill feeling for it. When there is a lack of sattva around, it's not that he craves it. He doesn't wait on the world to become sattvic, for himself to become sattvic. Someone who realizes that his growth is in his own hands. You must realize, I must realize this. We cannot wait on the world to change. This does not mean we're not affected by the world. I clarified this yesterday. This is the description of a completely evolved person. This is the description of a completely evolved person who is unaffected by his environment. But on the journey, particularly when we begin the spiritual journey, we are very much affected by our environment. So it's very important the kind of company we keep. Satsang. Satsang means good company. Sat ka sang. So we must make sure that we are around a sattvic environment. We are around good influence, because you and I are influenced by the environment. But what will we notice? As we grow spiritually, we become less and less influenced by the environment. We become less and less affected by the environment. Who we are does not change based on the environment. That's a marker of evolution. Someone who can be absolutely at ease, absolutely himself, regardless of the environment. Someone who is self-sufficient. The environment neither adds nor subtracts from him. Someone who is self-sufficient. Neither he hates a bad environment, nor he craves for a good environment. Neither he hates a bad circumstance, nor he craves for a good circumstance. Neither he hates a bad person, nor he craves for a person's qualities to change. Someone asked yesterday, what does it mean to not be judgmental towards tamas and rajas? This is what it means. You work with whatever you've got. If your team members, if your surroundings, if the people around you are tamasic, you work with that. You understand that, you empathize with that, instead of sitting in judgment with it. Why should that change your behavior? You should work by your standards. So, someone who is self-sufficient, someone who has gone beyond affectation from the environment, that comes with growth. How much? Suppose you're 40% evolved, it means you're 40% free from your environment. It's inversely proportional, right? Your dependence on the world reduces as your evolution rises. As you evolve, your dependence on the world falls. This is Vedanta 101, chapter 1 of Vedanta treatise. You will see this diagram. As you evolve, your dependence on the world goes down. So this is a way to measure your growth. Don't expect that on day one you will be completely independent of the world. It doesn't work like that. But how do you measure yourself? If you can withstand different circumstances, different environments, it means you're moving ahead of this journey. And then we discussed how he gets there. What is that piece of knowledge with which he is able to achieve this state, this self-sufficiency? He who seated like one unconcerned, udasinavat. He who seated like one unconcerned is not moved by gunas. Why? How? Because he realizes that only gunas function, nothing else. Guna guneshu vartante. Gunas function in gunas. That's all that's happening. Everything that's happening around him, every situation, every person and their behavior is simply a function of that person's gunas. He perfectly assesses. See, this is true for the most spiritual person. This is true for even in your business, for example. Even in your business, for example, if you if you assess a person clearly, you will not be surprised by their behavior, good or bad. If you assess a person clearly, you will not be surprised by their behavior. You will have expected it. So what makes you unmoved? What makes you relaxed? What makes you firm is your assessment. If you don't assess a person, if you simply want them to behave the way, if you simply expect them to behave the way you want them to behave, if you don't have a clear assessment of the person, you are bound to be disappointed. You're bound to be surprised. You're bound to be face the unexpected. The best of people behave the way they do because of their gunas. The worst of people behave the way they do because of their gunas. Good gunas create good action. Bad gunas create bad actions. Tamasic gunas create tamasic actions. Rajasic gunas create rajasic action. Sattvic gunas create sattvic action. It's as straightforward as that. Only gunas function. That's it. Unselfish action, unselfish gunas. So assess to what extent is a person unselfish, to what extent do they have unselfish gunas. You can't expect unselfish action from one with selfish gunas. It's not possible. You can't expect calmness from a person who is emotional. It's not possible. If you know a person is emotional and you expect them to be calm in a situation, who is the bigger fool? Is the person who's losing their calm a fool, or are you the fool for expecting them to not lose their calm? An emotional person cannot be objective. An objective person cannot be emotional. You expect an intellectual, very rational person to be over emotional. It's not possible. Swamiji used to share a story of one of his students. कहते थे कि not serious, but वो intellectual थे. वो अपने ख्यालों में मतलब कई लोग होते हैं. Some people are very outwardly expressive, and they're very good at organizing things and special occasions and this and that. They know how to cater to emotions. They know how to say the right things. And some people are more reserved. Some people express their love silently. Neither is right nor wrong. It depends on the nature of the person. It depends on the nature of the person. It's not about right or wrong. But this gentleman who was the student of Swamiji, his wife, of course, didn't assess him because she was emotional. An emotional person cannot assess. At the extent to which you are emotional, you cannot assess. You will expect. So his wife naturally expected him to be more outgoing and expressive, and and this was a gentleman who used to forget anniversaries, forget birthdays, almost. And an emotional person will feel that, who is this? Yeah, what are they doing? Why aren't they? Do they not love me? So he went to Swamiji with this problem. Swamijis have to face all sorts of problems. If you become a spiritual teacher, you get all sorts of questions, whether they are spiritual questions or not. But Swamiji, being Swamiji, decided to share his perspective. So the student came to Swamiji and said, I'm not able to express the way she wants me to express. I mean, she doesn't understand. I am intellectual. I'm not able to match up to that frequency. And Swamiji said, who is the bigger fool, she or you? You as an intellectual should understand. An emotional person cannot make that assessment. An emotional person cannot have that understanding. An emotional person will only have expectation. You should understand that. So you should show your emotion a little bit. I know it'll be hard, but show your emotion. Try to, this is an adjustment you have to make. Not really fake it, but, sort of be a little unnatural. It may be against your nature, but, maybe get her a card and some flowers and, so he's like, yes. Her birthday is coming up. I will make sure I give her some flowers and I get her a card or whatever. So somebody is like, great, go ahead, all the best. So the student, he was very nervous. He was very nervous, but one fine morning on the birthday of the wife, he gets up from bed early. And the wife suddenly sees he's not there. What happened? And suddenly when she wakes up, she sees he's coming to the room with bed tea. He's coming to the room with bed tea and some great breakfast, very tasty breakfast that he's prepared, and some flowers and a card. And she's like, what is this, darling? What is this? He's like, oh, it's your birthday. I thought I'll do something sweet for you for your birthday. He would have never done this. Only on Swamiji's advice he did all of this, because he had to try a little bit. This would have never struck him. He sought some help. He sought some suggestions from friends, And they told him, do this. So he did this. And the wife was so pleasantly surprised. She's like, oh my God, this is so sweet of you. This is so wonderful. I never thought you'd do this. But there's only one problem, honey. And he said, what? My birthday was day before yesterday. My birthday was day before yesterday. You're celebrating it today. So he never tried after that. After that, he was like, listen, this is not my cup of tea. My love expresses in different ways. We'll have to find some other way of, so even the honest attempt of his to show his emotion failed. Point I'm trying to make is everything is an expression of gunas. Everybody is helplessly a manifestation of their gunas. Of course, everybody has to, in any relationship, everybody has to adjust a little bit, go beyond what is always natural for them. They can't always say, see, you can't always be stuck up and say, no, this is my nature, I will not go beyond it. No, you have to adjust yourself for the expectations of the other person. But you as a person as well need to expect properly. You can't expect a forest in a desert. It's not possible. So whenever you're entering any relationship, whenever you're entering any business, in any job, in any organization, who are the people you're dealing with? Because you have to deal with them. You have to engage with them. You must assess. When you assess, you will have the right expectation. And when you have the right expectation, you will be absolutely calm. Even in a crisis, you will understand, okay, this was bound to happen because of ABCD reasons. So you have to make your assessment. You have to understand what are the gunas of a person. It is this very knowledge. It is this very understanding. And one more piece of knowledge. Not just this, but understanding that everybody is a helpless manifestation of their gunas. You expect that others will behave differently from their nature. Look at yourself. Are you able to behave differently from your nature? Are you able to change your nature? It's very hard. It's very hard. That's the work. That's the work. If you're trying to change certain tendencies and conditions in us, first of all, half the battle won is when you understand you have a certain quality. Becoming observant of that quality itself is half the battle won. Thereafter comes the effort. Thereafter comes the effort to change. And that change is very hard. It's not easy. So you have to have that empathy. A gunatita, a spiritually evolved person, is one who has that empathy. Right? He has that empathy. And naturally, because of that, he's calm. He's composed. He's prepared for any situation. That's what makes him calm and composed. So verse number 23 is where we left off. We'll continue on this description of a gunatita in verse number 24, chapter 14, verse number 24. This is the verse we'll conclude with in our description of the gunatita. We'll chant it together. Sama dukkha sukha svasthaha samaloshtasma kanchanaha tulya priya priyo dhiraha tulya nindastamastutihi sama dukkha sukham svasthaha samaloshtasma kanchanaha tulya priya priyo dhiraha tulya nindatamastutihi. जो स्वस्थ स्थिति में को प्राप्त, सुख दुख में समान, मिट्टी पत्थर और स्वर्ण में समभाव, धीर प्रिय और अप्रिय में बराबर, निंदा स्तुति में समान है. He to whom joy and sorrow are same, rooted in the self, to whom a clod of earth, stone and gold are the same, to whom pleasant and unpleasant are alike. The wise to him, to him much censure and praise are alike. So he's continuing in his description of the gunatita. Who is this gunatita? How is such a person? What is his nature? See, these are all descriptions. Now, these are all qualities we can strive to achieve These are all markers. These are all markers we can identify in ourselves to measure our state of growth. You will never be 100% this. You can never expect yourself to be 100% this. But the extent to which you achieve these qualities, it means to that extent you are evolved. So these are all markers. So don't expect this in yourself from day one, right? But again, this should be your goal. This should be your goal. So what are the qualities? Now he's talking about a sense of, first he talked about self-sufficiency. Now he's talking about samabhav, equanimity. जो स्वस्थ स्थिति को प्राप्त सुख दुख में समान है. Joy and sorrow are the same. To whom a clod of earth, patthar, mitti, stone, patthar, and gold, swarna. To whom a clod of earth, stone, and gold are the same. To whom unpleasant and pleasant situations are alike. So at every level, whether it is the emotional level, joy and sorrow, whether it is the material level, at the material level, we have all sorts of different values. For us, stone, for us, for example, earth. How valuable is earth? Earth has no value for us. You know why? Because we call it dirt. That's how we know. We have no value for earth because we call it dirt. If we valued it, we wouldn't call it dirt. When I used to be in college, जब मैं college में था, so I would do farming, and farming में हम खाद prepare करते हैं. Khad means fertilizer, natural fertilizer. So we used to prepare compost, and there's a whole process to that. There's a whole incredible process to that. I think some of my most important lessons have been learned while doing that farming and preparing that compost. The same thing when I went to the ashram, I started doing. So in the ashram, they gave me a name. They used to call me Kachra Wala. Because compost में क्या होता है, आप कचरे को लेते हो, मतलब you take the food from the kitchen, the leftover food or the peels and the all the scrap and stuff like that, and you go and put it in the compost pit. And एक process होता है जिसके द्वारा वो जो खाना है, वो जो scrap material है, वो खाद में बदलता है. एक टेक्निक होती है, उसे composting कहते हैं. So in the process of composting, what goes in is rubbish, what goes in is trash. And it's a whole wonderful process of 5 to 6 weeks. And what you get at the end of it is a very black, dark, rich soil. It's earth. जब मैं कॉलेज में था, उसके लिए नाम था. We used to call it black gold. We used to call it black gold because for a farmer, that is the most precious thing. Through that fertilizer, you get the best of plants. You can grow the best of plants and fruits and vegetables. So it was as good as gold, better than gold for a farmer, black gold. So coming back to the point, to a spiritually evolved person, earth, stone, and gold have the same value. For the common man, earth has no value, stone has little value or some value, and gold has maximum value. Why? Because we think that in exchange for gold, we can get a lot of happiness. In exchange for stone, we can get some amount of happiness. In exchange for earth, there'll be no happiness. We have these different expectations. We have these different values for these things. If I get that, I will be happy. If I get gold, I will be very happy. We have different values. To whom joy, so material level, emotional level, joy and sorrow are the same. To what extent are joy and sorrow the same for you and me? We crave for joyous occasions. We shudder to think of sorrowful occasions. This doesn't mean a gunatita person, wants sorrowful experiences. No. Doesn't mean that he shuns away joyous moments. That's not true. That's not the point. He's not a sadistic person. A gunatita is one who is equanimous through joy and through sorrow, because he has the highest knowledge of life. A gunatita is not one who gives away all his gold. That's not also true. A gunatita is one to whom all material objects are the same. Why? Because he has the highest knowledge of life. What is that knowledge? That one piece of knowledge. Nothing in the world can give him what he's looking for. Nothing in the world will bring you the fulfillment you're looking for. Just that understanding. What you're looking for is beyond. You're just a god playing the fool. You're just messing around out here. Whether it's with material objects, emotional experiences, intellectual ideas, you're just playing the fool. What you're truly looking for, what you really want, the fulfillment you seek, is not to be found in the world. That piece of knowledge is what keeps you equanimous through good and bad, through the best of experiences to the worst of experiences. At the sensual level, what is pleasant or what is unpleasant. In the summer, a nice cold room with AC is pleasant. The hot sun outside is unpleasant. Just 1 month ago, outside was pleasant, inside was unpleasant. Inside was stuffy and outside was very beautiful weather, the winter. Now everything has changed. Within 3 weeks, now the inside is pleasant, the outside is unpleasant, absolutely. Especially if you're in Delhi. So throughout the year, we are constantly chasing what is pleasant and running away from what is unpleasant. And we can't decide what is pleasant, what is unpleasant. We are simply knocked around by this. Why? Because we are at the level of the senses. We are victims of the senses. To a spiritually evolved person, he can withhold the most pleasant of experiences and the most unpleasant of experiences. To him, at the intellectual level, much censure and praise are alike. Whether you praise him or whether you criticize him. अगर हमें कोई criticize करता है, immediately we become defensive. Someone praises us, regardless of what they say, whether they say what they're saying is right or wrong, we feel like, oh, someone will come and say, what a good class, Utsav ji. Now, regardless of whether the class was good or not, immediately there is a sense of great satisfaction. So we are completely enamored by praise and completely dismissive of censure. But for a gunatita, for a spiritually evolved person, he's able to be measured in both. Not be moved by praise, not be carried away by praise, nor be dismissive and defensive about censure. Someone who can objectively listen. Beautiful quote by Shakespeare. Beautiful quote by Shakespeare. Reputation is a most false imposition. Reputation is an idle and most false imposition, oft got without merit and lost without deserving. आपकी जो reputation है, वो सबसे बेकार चीज है. That's what Shakespeare is saying. मैं नहीं कह रहा. Reputation जो है सबसे बेकार चीज है. Why? Because you get it without deserving. You get it without merit. Most often you get it without merit, and you also lose it when you don't deserve to lose it. Someone praises you not because you deserve that praise. Very often someone praises you because they want something from you. So you get it without your own merit. You get it usually because of some external circumstance. And you even lose your reputation. Not when you deserve it, because someone outside doesn't need you anymore. you're beyond your selling date. So you get your reputation, you get praise often without deserving, and you get censure and criticism often when you don't deserve it. So to be objective in that, to have that ability to not get carried away, listen to what the praise is, listen to what the censure is. If it is correct, accept it and appreciate it. If it is incorrect, it's okay, reject it and move on. Everybody has a right to their opinion. Why are you getting affected by that? So these are all the qualities at the material, physical, emotional, intellectual level. How a gunatita relates to all four levels: the material level, the physical level, pleasant or unpleasant, emotional level, joy or sorrow, and intellectual level, praise or censure. To such a person, all of these situations, circumstances are like he is self-sufficient, he is equanimous. So these are all yardsticks that you and I must maintain, or rather, you and I must strive for. These are all yardsticks you and I must strive for as we measure ourselves on growth. Over a period of time, slowly but surely, slowly and steadily, as you gain your roots, as you grow firmly in this knowledge, through reflection, through experience, slowly you will see these qualities being cultivated in you. And if these are not being cultivated in you, it means something is wrong. If for 10 years you've studied Vedanta, but none of these qualities you can even relate to, if you're 0% in all of these, it means maybe something is wrong in your study. We're not doing it properly. See, ultimately, we keep saying that a teacher can talk as much as they want. You can hear as many lectures as you want, but you have to go back and reflect upon this. You have to go back and contemplate upon this. You have to go back and study this. You have to make notes. You have to come up with questions. You have to have that engagement with this knowledge, because जितना आप मनन करोगे उतना आप इस knowledge को अपने अंदर अप्लाई कर पाओगे, इंप्लीमेंट कर पाओगे. So we can hear this. I'm sure we've heard, a lot of us have heard this before. But your study doesn't end in this classroom. यहाँ हम सिर्फ प्राइमर दे रहे हैं, यहाँ हम सिर्फ इंट्रोडक्शन दे रहे हैं. In the ashram, every lecture we used to take notes. Initially, when I used to see them taking notes, I was like, why are you writing every word? Every word क्यों लिख रहे हो? But it was very helpful. I also started it. And then अगली सुबह हम उन notes को fair करते थे. We used to clean those notes up. So I used to digitize my notes. And उस process में, in that process, you used to, in that process of cleaning up your notes, naturally a lot of thoughts, a lot of questions, a lot of queries would arise, a lot of clarifications would arise. Some of them I was able to answer to myself. Some of them you will be able to answer to yourself. A lot of them will remain doubts. But to ask a serious question, most people, they ask a question impulsively. These impulsive questions are not what we're talking about. Okay, we'll be there to answer your impulsive question. That's not the point. But if you want to actually go into the depth, you have to go through this process, and your question should come out of your reflection, not out of an impulse. So these are all qualities we have to sit back and try to go to the depth and what these qualities are truly indicating, because these are ways we will measure ourselves. These are ways we will understand how far am I getting on this spiritual journey, because we are all on the journey to Gunatita. We are all on the journey to reaching that state of ultimate evolution. A Gunatita is 100% evolved. We are somewhere in the middle. How do we move forward? The more and more we are able to align with these qualities, the more and more we are able to reflect these qualities in our own personality. To that extent, we will grow, or we have grown. right? So that was broadly, I'm not taking up any more verses in chapter 14. That was broadly the subject of the gunas in chapter 14, a very exhaustive study of the gunas, their different aspects and their influence and their part on the spiritual path. So something we should definitely revisit and study in detail. Chapter 14, starting chapter 14, one of the most helpful chapters in the Bhagavad Gita. This will culminate in chapter 18 when we talk about the personality chart, when we talk about the gunas in every aspect of life's activities. So this was the primer, this was the initial um, um, uh, exposition of the gunas. Now he shifts to chapter 15. Chapter 15 is called Purushottama Yoga. Purusha Uttama Yoga, the yoga of the Supreme Being. One of the most philosophical chapters of the Bhagavad Gita. He ends chapter 14 by talking about what the Gunatita achieves, what the Gunatita reaches. The Gunatita reaches Brahman. Gunatita reaches that state of self-realization, reaches God, merges with God. So what is that God? Who is that God? The description, the philosophical exposition of what is God and how is God present in the world, that exposition is given in this chapter, chapter 15. And we have some famous analogies, famous metaphors. If you have studied the Bhagavad Gita before or you have read about it, you must have all heard about the metaphor of the Ashwatha, the people tree. So that metaphor is what we will be taking up right now in the beginning of chapter 15. So first part of this chapter talks about Brahman in the macrocosm, in the world at large. What and where is Brahman? How is it a part of the macrocosm? The next part of the chapter will deal with Brahman in the microcosm. So we'll touch on both these parts. Before we move ahead. So on that note, we'll begin chapter 15, verse number 1. This is the next gem, very famous metaphor of the giant Ashwatha. Verse number 1 and 2 will talk about that metaphor. We'll take it up. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Urdhva Mula Madha Shakham Ashwatham Prahuravyayam Chandamsi Yasya Parnani Yastam Veda Savedavid. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Urdhva Mula Madha Shakham Ashwatham Prahuravyayam Chandamsi Yasya Parnani Yastam Veda Savedavid. श्री भगवान बोले, मूल ऊर्ध्व नीचे शाखा पीपल को अविनाशी कहते हैं, जिसके वेद पत्ते हैं उसको जो जानता है वह वेदों को जानने वाला है. श्री भगवान said, they speak of the imperishable Ashwatha giant fig tree with root above, branches below, whose leaves are hymns of Vedas. He who knows that gains the wisdom of the Vedas. Here, immediately in chapter 15, Bhagavan gives us the description of a giant fig tree. A fig tree, just so all of us understand what we're talking about, is a people tree. A giant fig. Ashwatha is a people tree. A giant people tree. Ashwatha means that which does not remain the same. Ashwatha means that which does not remain the same. Ashwatha resembles the world. Ashwatha is a metaphor for the world. The world doesn't remain the same. The world is in a constant flux of change. No situation, no person, no place, no thing is static. Everything is constantly changing. The world is in a constant flux of change. If you are aligned to that change, if you are in line with that change, if you are prepared for the change, you will succeed. If you're unprepared for change, you lose out. You'll miss out. So the Ashwatha represents the world at large. So in this world, now this world is represented, this giant Ashwatha tree is represented upside down. It's represented upside down, ulta. So first of all, the giant fig tree, the people tree, I don't know if you all know, the people tree is a very broad tree. And from its branches fall the almost like they're like threads. Threads fall from the branches and they go into the ground to create secondary roots. So an Ashwatha tree has a main root, a main trunk, which has a main root, and it has all sorts of these secondary roots. It's incredible. The people tree. I'm sure many of you have seen it. I think one of India's biggest people trees is in Chennai. Very big trees, people trees down south. Some of the oldest people trees are in Chennai. From where I am in Calcutta also, there is a giant people tree. And it's massive because it spreads horizontally. It's like a huge canopy. And the way it supports itself is through these secondary roots. So it's like almost like pillars. It's almost like pillars. So this tree is upside down. Roots above, branches below. Root above, not roots, sorry, root above, primary root above, branches below, whose leaves are hymns of Vedas. He who knows that gains wisdom of Vedas. So the root of the tree, the source of the tree, from where the tree has come about. What we see of the tree is only the the part above the ground. But the very source of the tree, what we often forget, where does the tree get its nourishment from? Where does the tree arise from? Where does the tree grow from? It doesn't grow from the top, it grows from the bottom. The tree grows from the roots. The roots are the source. The result is the tree. So the roots are the source of the tree. Similarly, what is the root of this world? What is the source of this world? Where has this world come about? From where has this world come about? The root of this world is Brahman. The root of this world is Brahman, is God. From God, from Brahman arises this everything. So in that sense, from the point of view of being the source of the world, the root of this tree is Brahman. And the reason why this tree has been presented upside down, it's to give that sense of respect and that honor to the root. The highest, the most grand, the most respected and revered is the root, is the Lord. Just as it's like, there is an umbrella over the king. You hold that highest. You hold that the highest. It's like a crown. So the crown of this world, the very source of this world, the highest. In any family tree also, the oldest is represented in the highest. In any organization chart also, the most senior person is represented higher. So the higher you are, or rather the more senior you are in that respect, the higher your position. Similarly, the highest position is given to Brahman. That's why this tree is represented upside down. Because even though it is the root, even though it is below the ground as such, it is unseen. You don't see the source. What you see is the world. Yet you ought to give it that sense of that position of respect. So it is shown upside down. And branches below, whose leaves are the hymns of the Vedas, the source of knowledge. The Vedas represent the knowledge which takes a human back to that source, which takes a human back to that root. Who knows that gains the wisdom of the Vedas. One who knows of this metaphor, one who knows that the root is Brahman, and from that emerges this massive, infinitely huge tree. The Ashwatha is huge. That huge tree represents the all-pervading aspect of the world. The world is massive, it's infinite in its expression. He who knows that gains the wisdom of the Vedas. We'll take up this metaphor further because there's a second verse also, second and third verse also to this. We'll take it up tomorrow and we'll continue on our study of chapter 15. So with that thought, we'll end today's class. Have a wonderful day. Hari Om Tat Sat. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.